Well, this is our last sermon on this series of sermons. We've been looking at the seasons that we go through in life. The spring seasons when everything is great, and summer when everything's just working out. Fall when it starts to slow down, and then today winter when it's not going as well as we want it to go. And we've tried to pull from this idea in Scripture that we should expect that. I mean, not just the seasons to change, but that the seasons in our lives are going to change. There's a time for everything, and you're going to go through high times and low times and good times and bad times. And there's a monotony to it, I suppose, but there's also a rhythm to it, and you shouldn't expect that the times you go through are going to last forever. The key for you is to just be ready, no matter what comes along, and make the most of every opportunity. We have looked at Simon Peter as kind of our example in this thing. And Peter is called by Jesus. He's just a fisherman, and he's by himself after a really bad day of work, really bad night of work, and he's cleaning his nets. And Jesus comes and does a miracle and calls him, and everything is clicking along pretty good for him. He's renamed. He's not just Simon anymore. Now he's Peter the Rock, and his life takes off. Mark talked about a couple weeks ago in a sermon that there's a summertime for Peter where he's Jesus' right-hand man. And he gets to be the first one on so many different things, and is the first of all the apostles, and he's the one who gets to speak at Pentecost when the church is launched. And there's certainly for Peter a summer season where everything clicks off just like it's supposed to. And Mark told us when you go through a season like that, you should take advantage. That's the time to push your chips in and to strike while the iron's hot. When you're in a moment like that, you should seize it. Do the best you can. We looked last week at fall. Fall is when things start to break down, and while fall can be really pretty, and some people really like fall, that's when all the leaves start to die. And there will be fall seasons in your life where you'll make mistakes, and things won't go like you want. With Peter, there's lots of examples of that where he makes mistakes. And we looked at that. Now he came through it. And we've talked about, I think, all the way through this series, that the seasons won't always go sequentially like that. Sometimes you'll be in a real spring season, and it'll flip immediately to winter, or maybe a summer moment will come when you least expect it. I mean, the seasons don't go sequentially like this, and they don't last exactly as long as, sometimes it can be kind of random how long all of it goes. But again, you're going to get lots of different things thrown at you in this life, and the key is to make the most of it when that happens, and Peter's been kind of our example. And then today, I want to talk about Peter in winter, when he's kind of given up. And we'll talk about that and when everything is kind of falling apart. The thing with winter to remember is that it won't last. I mean, it can be pretty bad for a moment, but it won't last. When you see a picture like this one, I don't know what you think about it behind me there. Is that a positive or negative thing? I think for some people it's positive. Boy, it's really pretty and it's kind of cool. It'd be fun to get out there and feel your air in your lungs and sledding and snowballs and stuff. But for a lot of people, it's cold, and you think, man, I'm glad that's over. I'm glad that we're finally getting out of that and don't have to be in that any longer. And winter, for me, my birthday's in the winter. I have some Christmas, Christmas is in the winter, and I've got some fond memories of some winter things, sledding and stuff like that. But I also have a lot of bad memories where it just seemed like it drug on, forever and ever and ever, and you're just so sick of the cold, and you're just ready for it to change, and you hope it'll change, but you're not sure. There's a Bill Murray movie my wife really likes, Groundhog Day. And he's stuck. If you've not seen the movie, it's like 30 years old. You should go see it. It's 30 years old. But he's stuck in Groundhog Day. And every day, it's the same Groundhog Day. And every day, he gets to see the groundhog make a forecast. And about halfway through the movie, Bill Murray makes a forecast. I'll tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be dark. It's going to be cold. It's going to last you the rest of your life. And it's really kind of, and winter feels like that. Like it's never going to go away when you're in the winter. And so what I wanted to do here, and the whole point of the whole sermon, as we get into this thing, is that I want you to know that the seasons come and go. We can hold on tight to that, Our life experience shows us that that's true. There may have been moments when you were a kid that you prayed, God, if you'll just get rid of this moment, I'll never ask for anything again. And that moment faded. There's been moments, I'm sure, in your life where you thought you blew it so bad you would never be able to fix it or figure it out, and you did. We've seen in our life the good and the bad kind of goes through, and it kind of keeps cycling, and we can hold on when we're in a bad moment with that assurance. We can hold on to Scripture. You know, the Bible is full of guys who went through some really, really, really bad stuff. David was an outlaw for years, and Joseph was a slave. Jacob has to sleep on the ground and run away from everything he's ever known, and it's 2 decades before he can get back to his family. And then there's Abraham. Abraham spends his whole life waiting for God to come through. And he's 100 years old before God does the thing that he promised he would do. For 100 years, Abraham waits and waits and waits and waits and waits. And yet, he kept his faith. The Bible talks about it. It says Abraham believed in the God who brings the dead back to life. And he can create new things out of nothing. And because he believed in God like that, he was able to stay strong, even in kind of a long winter season. And you can too. And so what I want to talk about today is for the person who feels like they're kind of in the winter. And how we're measuring that for our sermon series is it just feels like God is distant. You know, you've probably made a mistake or 2 or 10, and now you're reaping the benefit of that. Maybe it's a mistake in your marriage or as you're parenting, or it's a mistake with your money or your job. It can be 1,000 different, or just life, and for whatever reason you've allowed this darkness to kind of get in there, and now God feels really distant, and you wonder if you're ever going to have that same relationship with God that you used to have. And it's in those moments that we need to come back to what we really believe about God. And now he's going to show himself to be true because that's what he always does. And these low moments that we go through can be some of the very best moments for growing our faith. God can use those too. He certainly can use the mountaintops, but these long valleys, God can use those too. And so again, we're going to look at Peter and draw our inspiration from him and what happened in his life. Now, it says in John 21, if you want to look in your Bible, you can. I'll put it on the screen here too. John chapter 21, very last chapter in the book of John. It says, afterward, Jesus appeared again. And so just a little history before we get into this. Afterward is after the cross, after the resurrection, after he's already appeared to him once. And for Peter in particular, that was a hard weekend. Jesus Jesus' cross and all that. Primarily hard because of all the decisions that Peter made. It's like one bad decision after another. When they're in the garden, it's Peter who pulls his sword out and tries to attack. We'll fight our way out. And Jesus won't let him fight his way out and tells Peter to put his sword away. And then Peter runs. It's Peter who denies Jesus 3 times while he's on trial. And that third time that he denies him, the book of Luke says that Jesus can hear him do it. And Jesus turns and looks at Peter. And they make eye contact. And Peter runs away because he's let Jesus down. You know, he's in his worst moment. At the cross, Peter's nowhere to be found. It says he goes out of the city after he denies Jesus and cries, and maybe he just goes home. I think he really felt like he had blown it at every turn the whole weekend. And now afterward, Jesus appeared to him again, and here's how it happened. And this is the story. Peter says to the other guys, to the disciples, I'm going to go fish. And it could just be a diversion, you know, like people still today. I'm going to go fish to get my mind off things. And it may just be that. That's certainly possible. But Peter was a fisherman. That was his career. And that's what he wanted to do when Jesus appeared way back in the spring. And he told Jesus, you go find someone else, you know. And Jesus wouldn't take no for an answer. And they launched off into this deal. Now Peter's blown it. And I'm going to go back to that. That's what I know. And he tells the other disciples that, and it mentions, I skipped over a verse in the middle of this, but there's 7 of them that say, okay, we'll go. 7 of the 11 disciples are left. Judas is already gone, and of the 11 that are left, 7 of them say, we'll go fish too. Let's just get out of this. And they went out that night, and they fished all night, and they didn't catch anything. And the next morning, Jesus is standing on the shore, but the disciples don't realize it's Jesus. And he calls out to them, friends, you got any fish? And which would probably be deflating. And no, they said, well, won't you throw your net on the other side of the boat? Maybe you'll find some over there. Now, if you were at Lake Monroe fishing and you hadn't caught anything and the guy on the dock says, hey, won't you throw on the other side of the boat? I bet the fish are on that side. You probably wouldn't take that advice. In fact, it'd probably make you mad that somebody had tossed that out at you. It'd probably make you a little ticked off. They're being a smart aleck. But these guys have been around Jesus, and they've seen this sort of thing go that way before, and so they do. They throw their nets out, and they caught so many fish they couldn't haul the net in. They couldn't get the net out of the water because there's so many fish in the net. And then the disciple whom Jesus loved, and that's we think John, who wrote the book, that he's talking about himself here. He didn't just say John. When he talks about himself, says the disciple Jesus loved. And then John, the disciple Jesus loved, he says to Peter, "It's the Lord." And when Peter heard it, "It's the Lord," he put on his outer garment. A lot of times fishermen would strip down because to get that fish slime and water and everything on you. Puts his outer garment back on, and he jumps in the water, and he goes, going to be respectful in front of Jesus, and he swims to shore. And they weren't that far offshore, about 100 yards offshore, and they swim in there, and the disciples are bringing the net full of fish. And when they landed, there's this fire of burning coals there. Charcoal fire with some fish on it, and in Greek, charcoal fire it's a Greek word, anthraka, and it's a weird word. It's not a word that gets used very often. It's a very specific definition of a fire, charcoal fire. It's only used twice in the New Testament, once here, and once the fire in John 18. There's a fire that Peter's standing around when he denies Jesus. He's standing around a fire, and a girl says, "Hey, weren't you with him?" "No, I don't know who you're talking about." It was that moment. There was a charcoal fire. And it's probably on purpose when John writes this, that Peter would remember that. He'd smell the smoke. He'd smell it. It has a certain odor, and he'd see that, and he'd smell it, and it'd bring it all back. And Jesus says to him, "Hey, come have breakfast." And he doesn't get into all the other stuff. Let's just eat. And after they'd finished eating, Jesus says to Simon Peter, there's a lot going on this slide here. It says, Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" And we don't know who the these are. He could be, the way the English of this is, the Greek, how it translates, he could be saying, "Do you love me more than these other 7 guys?" He could be saying that, "Do you love me more than these others?" And that's possible. Or he could be saying, "Do you love me more than these?" Meaning the boat and the net and the fish and the beach. And do you love me more? Do you love me more than this job, this career, this life you had planned for yourself? Do you love me more than that plan? And I think that's probably what he's saying. I think that's probably what he's getting at too. But it could go either way. And it's kind of cool. It's probably sad at the moment. But when it says, he said to Simon Peter, remember, Peter's the name that Jesus gave him. It's a Greek name which means rock. Simon the rock. And Jesus called him rock. And again, we say Peter because we take the Greek word and we make it an English name, but it meant rock. That's what it means. And so he calls him rock, like Apollo calls Rocky Rock in the movie. Like the whole time he calls him, "Hey, Rock," and like the whole name was evocative of, you're going to be my foundation. You're going to be the guy who's I build around. So he says to Simon Peter, and that's who it is. But he doesn't call him Simon Peter. In the quotes, he says, "Simon, son of John." So it's like he's giving him an out, kind of, there too. Are you sure you still want that? Are you sure you still want to be the rock? Are you sure? So Simon, son of John, he says, "Do you love me more than these?" And yeah, Peter says, "I love you." And so Jesus says, "Well, then feed my lambs." And the lambs are us. It's the Christians. It's the church. Be my shepherd. Get out there and take care of folks. That's what he's saying. Go take care of folks. My folks, go take care of my people. And he asked him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he answered, "Yes, Lord, I love you. Take care of my sheep." So the same thing. And then a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter's hurt. And there's a couple different possibilities here, but I think he's probably most likely hurt because it reminds him of the denials. 3 times he's asked him, and 3 times he's asked Jesus, "Are you sure? You denied me 3 times, and so 3 times, do you love me, or are we good?" And Peter's heard about it, but he says, I love you. And Jesus says, well, get to work. If you love me, then get to work. Feed my sheep. Follow me. You know? And it's all kind of put behind. Let's just move on. Now I want to review, Jesus offers Peter like this abundance. Like he's fished by himself all night long, and now he's got a whole net full of fish because he's following. Once he's back with Jesus, he's got more than he can handle. And I don't believe, there's like a health and wealth gospel people teach sometimes where they'll say if you believe in Jesus, your faith is strong enough, you'll be rich and famous and good looking. And I don't know that God's going to help your looks that much, or your fame, or for that matter, your money. I don't know if that's the right way to see it, but I do believe that if you follow God, he will give you everything you need. I think my God will supply all your needs in Christ Jesus. I think that's true. I think that's exactly what will happen. And it doesn't totally matter if you're really good at it or really not so good at it. As long as you're trying to follow after him, you'll have enough. And I think that's true, and I think that's still true, and I think that will always be true. And Jesus offers that to him. You know, come back. You're later on, he'll talk to a guy named Paul, and he'll say, when Paul first comes around, he'll say, Paul, you're like an ox that's backing up into the cart. You know, you're like you're backing up into the whips and the goads and stuff. And Peter, you're out there fishing, but you're not catching anything. And he offers him a chance to come back. That's pretty cool. And Jesus offers him forgiveness. Now, it's true, he never says, I forgive you. No, I mean, those words never come off Jesus' lips. But he's gracious to him, right? He's kind to him. He makes him breakfast, and they hang out there, and they visit, and they talk, and it's like it's all over. You think about somebody who you're mad at, or who's mad at you, and you know they're mad at you, and you've had this big blow up, and maybe they started it, or maybe you did, but whoever, there's a big blow up, and at the end of it, both of you said, you know, I don't have to see you anymore, and you both kind of went your separate ways, and in the middle of all that, you see him in town. You know, you got all that in your mind, and you see him in town. How do you expect that to go? Well, maybe I'll get the silent treatment, you know, or maybe he'll give me the cold shoulder, or maybe he won't make eye contact. Maybe he'll say, how could you have done that to me, you know, and blame me for it. And Jesus doesn't really do any of that. He just kind of puts it behind him. And he offers him grace when I'm sure Peter was expecting something else. He offers him a calling. And breakfast. There it is. And breakfast. I'll get to breakfast in a second. He offers him a calling. He tells him, go feed my sheep and take care of things. You know, go out there and make a difference in the world. And your life's not over, and you made some mistakes, but let's move on now. Now, I should say, before I get into anything else, if Peter had said, no, I'll just be a fisherman, thanks, but I'll just be a fisherman, that would have been okay. I mean, that would have been okay. And being a fisherman would make the world a little better place. It would. I don't know what you guys do for a living, but those of you who build roads or doctor or cook or clean or whatever it is you do to make money, I mean, all those things make the world a better place. And there's a glory and a purpose in that that's pretty awesome all by itself. And if all you did with your life was just work real hard and make this world a little better place that way, that'd be awesome. But Jesus offers more. Because no matter how well you doctor or clean or cook or take care of numbers, the only thing that's really going to change a person's heart is Christ. And if you really want to make some giant impact in this world, well, he opens the door. And it's real tempting when you're in the winter to think, well, I've blown it too bad. I can't do that. And yet Jesus just keeps giving you chances. He did that with Peter, and he'd do that with you. And the breakfast thing, one of my favorite shows is Parks and Recreation. I watched every episode a couple times, and Ron Swanson says, and I'm going to misquote it, but something to the effect of, there is no sadness in life that breakfast food cannot address. And that's the truth. Breakfast food can cure a lot of problems. And Jesus probably won't give you breakfast. That probably isn't going to happen. But I think a lot of times we could do a world of good for people if we just took them out to breakfast now and again. And especially the people maybe that are in the winter themselves. Again, we talk about the calling we have. Something about just eating with somebody. You don't ask anything, and there's no pressure. There's no sales pitch. I just want to let you know I care about you. That's a powerful thing. And again, while Jesus won't physically appear and do that for us, you can make a real difference in somebody's life with bacon. Write that down. That's a good thing to write down and take out of here if you're trying to make sermon notes. Okay, so that's all for that. So how can you apply that? If you're stuck in a winter moment, what can you do? How can you survive the winter when that happens? Just two pieces of advice. Just two things. First of all, when you're in the winter, try to stay as warm as you can. One thing, and when I say warm here, I mean spiritually. One thing I've noticed about winter seasons in my life, when I'm struggling, when I've really blown it, when I've made some big mistakes, it gets harder to be Christian in some of those moments. Now, if something's happened to me, or could happen to me, well, I'll pray real hard about that. But when I'm the one who's making the problem, when I've blown it, sometimes it gets hard to pray, hard to read, hard to want to go to church, hard to want to be with people and I'm mad and they don't seem mad, and they say, how are you doing? And I don't want to tell them how I'm really doing, and it just feels fake and I feel fake, and so I don't go. And that's the worst thing you can do when you're in those moments. Just stay as warm as you can. Paul, giving advice to Timothy, says, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, and I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God. You may just have a little spark going there, but you can put a little air to that and really get it cooking and stay as warm as you can. When you're in a hard situation, and it's a little dry to go to God, keep going to God anyway, because it won't last forever, and that little moment that you reach out to God will pay off. I was reading a story, getting ready for the sermon, thinking about winter, and I found out about this couple in Nevada. I don't know if you can see it in the back, or if it's clear, you can see it there. James Glanton and Christina McEntee, and they had 4 kids, and they were in their Jeep, which is way too many for a Jeep, and they were out in the Nevada winter, and they slid off the road and into a ditch upside down, and they were there for 48 hours. You can't see the Jeep from the road. They were there for 48 hours. It got down to minus 21. And James was able to get a fire going. They had carried along enough stuff to do that. And he heated up rocks and put them in the spare tire for insulation. And they all kind of huddled around the heated rocks to try to stay warm. And none of them got frostbite. I know it probably wasn't the kind of winter experience they wanted, but sometimes you just have to power through. So that's my first bit of advice. If you're in a winter season right now, come back to God. Try to pray, try to read, try to get back in church. If it feels a little dry, try even harder. It won't stay dry like that very long, and it'll do you a world of good. But then second, remember that help's coming. I read about this science experiment. A guy named Kurt Richter back in the 60s took a bunch of rats, and he found out if he put the rats in like a pitcher of water with slick sides, the average rat could swim about 10 to 15 minutes before it gave up and drowned. 10 to 15 minutes. So he got a bunch of rats. And he had 2 groups. One group, he just put them into the water to see how long they could swim. And the other group, he put them in the water for like 5 minutes and then pulled them out, dried them off, let them rest, and then put them back in and left them. And what he found is the rats who never got pulled out, they died in about 10 to 15 minutes. They didn't live very long. The rats that pulled out and put them back in, those rats could go for 60 minutes. 4 times as long. He didn't make them wear goggles. It's the only picture of a rat in the water I could find that I thought was appropriate to show you guys. But when they had that thought of hope, that maybe this is going to work out, before somebody came and got me, when they had that little bit of hope, you'll push a lot further. If you just remember that that this won't last. And help is coming, and God's going to come through. And a lot of times it's our lack of hope, our unbelief, that really wrecks us when we get into a winter season. I was reading this thing by Kyle Idleman. He's the minister at Southeastern Louisville, and he talked about getting caught in a spider's web. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. You're in the woods or in an old barn or something. You walk right into it, and it's huge, and it's all over you, and it feels like it takes forever to get it off, and everybody's laughing at you because you're dancing. They can't see the web, but they can see you dancing. And then it occurs to you that there's probably spiders in the web, and now you feel them everywhere, and it's just awful. And even minutes later, you're still picking the spider web off. It's still in your hair, and it just takes forever to get entangled in it. It just holds on to you, and you can't get rid of it. And sin can be like that. Sin can tangle up on us. It can get on us, and we have a hard time getting away from it. You make a bad decision or two bad decisions, and now it's like Idleman talked about a friend of his. He had a friend who liked to gamble. And it started off just poker games with friends, and then he's going to Vegas, and he'll come back and say, yeah, I spent $2,000 at Vegas, but I probably would have spent $2,000 at Disney World or whatever, and it's just fun for me. And it just kept getting more. He finally gambled so much, he owed like in six figures. He lost his wife, he lost his job. It just kept getting worse, it just kept getting worse, it just kept getting worse. And Idleman says, I saw him the other day. And we made some small talk for a minute, and I asked him how he was doing with his recovery, and he said something about, I feel like my luck's getting ready to change. So he's still hitting it there. And sin can be like that. And we talk about that all the time in here. I don't need to pound away at that, but whether it's anger or pride or greed or lust, it doesn't matter. It just, you can, what's the old advice? When you find you've dug yourself a deep hole and you're in a deep hole, quit digging. And sometimes it's really hard to do that. We just keep digging and we just keep making it worse and go a little further and go a little further. And sin can be that way. And then right on the heels of sin, there's guilt. And guilt reminds you of what a mess you are, And guilt can be a little healthy at first because it might prompt you to apologize, or it might prompt you to try to make it right or get help or whatever. But eventually guilt can get out of hand, and you're laying awake at night and you can't sleep because you just feel I can't believe, how'd I get here? And you're just recycling this thing through your head over and over again. You're feeling worse and worse. And the devil loves to hit us with guilt. And I've talked about this before from the stage, I have, so bear with me. But like Satan, the word Satan with a capital S means Satan. It means the devil. So that means him. But like a small s, Satan's a Hebrew word, and it means accuser. And the devil loves to accuse. You're a screw up, and you're never going to get, you're awful. And so guilt starts to morph into shame. Guilt is when you remember all the stuff you did. Shame is when you feel like I'm never going to get better. It's the guy praying, God, give me one more chance, I'll never do it again. And even while they're praying it, they think, well, I'll probably do it again. I don't have much faith in my own ability here, God. And it's a hopelessness, And guilt and shame, and they're like a spider web, and they just kind of stick to you. And so I want to think again about Peter in this whole story. He blew it about as much as you can, right? I mean, he actually saw Jesus. I have to have faith in Jesus and faith about what he did or didn't do, but Peter saw it. And Peter walked on water, and Peter had saw the 5,000 get fed. Peter had done a ton of stuff. I mean, he'd been right there with Jesus for everything, and then he blew it. And Jesus saw him blow it. And when Jesus needed him the most, he was nowhere to be found. And I just imagine that whole weekend, just guilt and shame, and again, the shame quickly kicking in. I told you, Jesus, there's Christians who can do that sort of thing, but I'm not one of those. I'm just a sinful person, and it's hanging on him like a web, and then Jesus comes and gives him peace. And Jesus will do that for you. We've all sinned, right? We've all blown it. We all fall short of God's glory. I mean, I fall short of my wife's glory and my kids' glory. So I know I fall short of a holy God. We've all sinned, and we all fall short, and yet we're justified freely. I mean, every word of this verse is important. We're justified, made just as if I had never sinned. He makes us right with God, and he does it freely, just from grace. We didn't deserve it. We didn't earn it. When he died on that cross, when he paid for my sin, he justified me. He made me right. You think about going to play in a basketball game, and you're the last one picked. You know, remember that movie that a long time ago? It's a stupid movie, like Mike, and the kid finds Michael Jordan's old shoes, and it is the shoes. And he puts the shoes on, and now he can jump out of the gym, you know, and he can dunk it whenever he wants to. And he's the last kid picked on the team. I guess I'll take him. But now you're dunking, and you can hit 3-pointers, and it's like it's not you, it's the shoes. Well, it's not me, it's the cross. Like Jesus is coming, and he's justified me freely by his grace. He's redeemed me. And it's no longer, maybe I deserve from my head to be the last guy picked, but he makes me first. He's given me abundance, and he's given me grace, and he's given me a calling, and he's done it all free through the cross in Christ Jesus. Even though I've sinned, I'm invited back. And this is kind of the antidote for winter in our lives all the way through. When I focus and meditate on this, there's a verse in Hebrews that says we need to get rid of the sin in our lives that so easily entangles, right? In Hebrews 12:1, get rid of that sin that so easily entangles. And the sin that entangles, of course, is all the things I talked about. It's pride and anger and greed and lust. But one of the things that entangles is this lack of belief and this lack of trust in God. He has told you that he'll make it right. He has told you that he has made it right. You just got to trust him. And so as we finish up here, I want to speak to anybody who's kind of in a winter period. Either because of the things you did or because of things that were done to you, because of your health or your relationships or your money or your choices. I want to talk to anybody who feels like God is a million miles away and it feels like I can't ever do anything to get him closer. I want you to know springtime's coming. And this verse is the start. When we talk about communion, we do that every week in our church. We take the bread, we take the juice to remember that Jesus died for us. It's the foundation, the rock of everything else that we believe in. We baptize a person, we wash the old man away, and the new one comes out of the water, and you're made clean. And that promise is available to anyone who wants it. Let me pray for you. Dear Lord God, I thank you for this group. God, as we finish up our service and we wind down here towards the end, God, I just want to pray for anybody out there who feels a long way off. I want to pray, God, for the person out there who feels like they're the last one to get chosen, or that their marriage is in desperate need of a counselor. For the parent whose kids are not on the honor roll, for the ones who feel like they've made a terrible mess of everything. I just pray, God, you whisper to us again and let us walk towards you, knowing that we're going to find grace there, knowing that we're going to find you there. And I pray, God, that you shine that way in us, in me. In Christ's name, amen. Won't you stand up?